The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Security Council sparkled under the light of 3 suns. Inside, 12 of the galaxy's most powerful warrior races gathered for an emergency meeting. Their ornate armor and ceremonial weapons gleamed, a stark contrast to the simple blue uniform worn by the human representative, who sat quietly in the corner. Captain Tom Miller watched as the council members strutted and postured. The rock warriors of Beta Centauri, with their granite-like skin, thumped their chests. The metallic-scaled lords of Proxima flexed their razor-sharp claws. The plasma-breathing guardians of Arcturus let small flames escape their mouths as they spoke. Each race tried to appear more fearsome than the next. The quantum anomaly has consumed 3 star systems in the past month, announced First Speaker Max, his crystalline body reflecting rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. It grows larger with each passing day. Holograms appeared in the center of the room, showing the swirling mass of dark energy that seemed to devour everything in its path. Stars, planets, and entire solar systems disappeared into its endless void. The display made Miller's stomach turn, but he kept his face neutral as he took careful notes on his datavat. The warriors of Beta Centauri volunteer to lead the charge, thundered Stone Commander Rod, slamming his granite fist on the table. We will crush this anomaly like we crush mountains. Cheers erupted from several council members. Miller noticed how they all seemed to ignore the scientific data floating beside the main hologram, data that showed the anomaly's devastating effect on matter itself. The Lords of Proxima will join this glorious battle, roared Metal Chief Blade, his scales rattling with excitement. Our fleet stands ready to pierce the heart of this space demon. More cheers, more boasting, more warriors volunteering their forces for what Miller knew would be a suicide mission. He looked down at his notes again, running calculations through his mind. Perhaps, Miller said quietly, raising his hand, we should study the anomaly's properties before. Silence, human. Stone Commander Rod's voice shook the chamber. We all know your kind's reputation, always hiding behind your shields, your backup systems, your endless safety protocols. Laughter echoed through the dome. Miller felt his face grow hot, but he kept his voice steady. The data shows that the anomaly's outer layer produces quantum fluctuations that could tear apart. Data, protocols, studies. Metal Chief Blade spat the words like insults. This is why humans are considered the cowards of the galaxy. While we fight, you hide behind numbers and charts. The council erupted in mockery. First Speaker Max raised his crystalline hand for silence, but his amused expression showed he shared their sentiment. The humans' fear is noted, First Speaker Max said with a condescending smile. But this is a time for action, not careful studies. The combined fleets of the warrior races will launch an assault within 3 days. Those who wish to prove their bravery may join. Those who wish to study may watch from a safe distance. Miller watched as the warrior races began coordinating their attack plans, completely ignoring the warning signs in the data. He quietly activated his neural link to Earth Command. They won't listen, he subvocalized, requesting permission to position our research vessels at safe observation points. When their attack fails, and it will fail, we need to be ready to gather data and potentially rescue survivors. The response came quickly. Permission granted, but maintain minimal presence. We don't want to provoke them by appearing to doubt their courage. Miller looked at the hologram one last time before gathering his materials. The anomaly swirled ominously, its patterns defying normal physics. The warrior races saw it as a monster to be slain. But Miller saw something else, a puzzle that needed solving, a challenge that required brains over brawn. As he walked out of the chamber, the sounds of war planning echoing behind him, Miller thought about how many lives would be lost before the council realized that sometimes the bravest thing to do was to stop and think. 3 days had passed since the council meeting. Captain Tom Miller stood aboard the human research vessel Observer, watching the massive fleet of warrior races gather near the quantum anomaly. The void of space lit up with their weapons, engines, and ceremonial lights, a deadly parade of power and pride. "Status report," Miller called out to his science officer. Dr. Alice Reed looked up from her station, her face illuminated by streams of data. "The anomaly's energy readings are off the charts. Our probes detect quantum destabilization effects extending twice as far as previously recorded. I've tried sending this data to the Warrior fleet, but they're ignoring our transmissions." Miller nodded, expecting nothing less. Through the main viewport, he watched as the rock warriors of Beta Centauri moved their massive stone ships into position. Their vessels, carved from asteroid cores and powered by plasma drives, formed the first attack wave. "All observation drones in position," reported Lieutenant Dave from his station. "Emergency rescue pods are prepped and ready." "They're calling us cowards for deploying rescue equipment," Reed said, shaking her head. "The Proxima Lords just sent a message mocking our lack of faith and warrior courage." Miller watched as Stone Commander Rod's voice boomed across all channels. "Warriors of the galaxy, watch as we demonstrate true bravery. For glory." The Rock Warrior fleet surged forward, their stone ships glowing red-hot as they pushed their engines beyond safety limits. They approached the anomaly's outer boundary, weapons charging. "Energy spike detected," Reed called out. "The anomaly is reacting to their presence." The massive void seemed to pulse, its swirling darkness taking on a purple hue. The Rock Warrior ships fired their main weapons, beams of concentrated plasma that could shatter planets. The beams disappeared into the darkness without effect. "Their weapons aren't even reaching the core," Dave reported. "The anomaly is. Wait, quantum fluctuations increasing." Miller watched in horror as the first wave of stone ships began to break apart. The quantum forces twisted metal, shattered rock, and warped space itself. Stone Commander Rod's final transmission cut through the chaos. "Impossible. We cannot be defeated by mere." Static filled the channel. Where the proud Rock Warrior fleet had been, only fragments of stone and metal remained, quickly disappearing into the void. "Detecting multiple distress signals," Dave announced. "Some escape pods made it out." "Launch rescue drones," Miller ordered. "Medical bay, prepare for survivors." But before the rescue operation could begin, the Lords of Proxima charged forward with their fleet of metallic vessels. "Fools!" Metal Chief Blade's voice rang out. "The Rock Warriors were weak. Watch how real warriors fight." Miller and his crew could only watch as the scene repeated itself. The Proximan ships, for all their advanced technology and warrior pride, lasted barely 30 seconds longer than the Rock Warriors before being torn apart. "Sir," Reed said quietly, "I'm detecting a pattern in the anomaly's reactions. Each attack seems to make it stronger. It's absorbing the energy from their weapons, using it to expand." Miller pressed a button on his chair, broadcasting to all remaining ships. "This is Captain Miller of Earth. Our data shows the anomaly is feeding off your attacks. Please, hold back and let us analyze." "Silence, human coward." The Guardians of Arcturus cut him off. "You hide and watch while true warriors fight. Our plasma breath will succeed where others failed." Miller slumped in his chair as the third wave of ships moved into position. On his screens, the data painted a clear picture. Each failed attack was making things worse. But the warrior races were too proud, too caught up in their battle glory to see it. "Record everything," he ordered his crew. "Document every detail. Someone needs to learn from this." As the Arcturus fleet began their doomed charge, Miller thought about courage, real courage. Not the showy, glory-seeking kind that these warriors displayed, but the quiet courage to stand back, think, and do what's right even when everyone mocks you for it. "Prepare to recover more survivors," he said. "Something tells me we're going to be busy." The medical bay of the Observer was filled to capacity. Injured warriors from 3 different species lay in recovery pods, their pride wounded even more than their bodies. Captain Miller walked between the rows, checking on the survivors they'd managed to rescue. "How are they doing?" he asked Dr. Reed, who was reviewing medical data on her tablet. "They'll live," she replied, glancing at a rock warrior whose stone skin was cracked and fragmented, though some of them say they'd rather have died gloriously in battle. The ship's main display showed the quantum anomaly, now 30% larger than when the first attack began. The remaining warrior races had gathered for yet another emergency council meeting, this time conducted via hologram because no one wanted to leave their fleets. The first 3 attacks were merely tests, declared War Masterbolt of the Lightning Clans, his electrical form crackling with energy. "Now we will show true power." Miller watched as the Lightning Clan ships moved into position. Their vessels, wreathed in artificial lightning and charged with enough power to light up a small sun, approached the anomaly's edge. "They're not even looking at the data from the previous attacks," Reed said, frustration clear in her voice. "The anomaly's quantum field is even stronger now. They won't last 10 seconds. She was wrong. They lasted 8. The Lightning Clan ships fired massive bolts of pure energy at the void. For a brief moment, the electricity seemed to form a net around the anomaly's edge. Then the darkness pulsed, and the energy net collapsed inward. The ships, still connected to their own weapons by streams of lightning, were pulled in like moths to a flame. "Launch rescue drones," Miller ordered automatically, though he knew there would be few survivors this time. The quantum forces had torn the ships apart too quickly. "Captain," his tactical officer called out, "the Starforge Empire is positioning their fleet. They're linking their ships together into some kind of massive energy weapon." Miller grabbed the communications controls. "Starforge Command, please wait. Your combined energy signature will only make the anomaly stronger. We have clear data showing." "Data means nothing." The Starforge Emperor's voice boomed through the speakers. "The previous attacks failed because they were too small. We will combine the power of our entire fleet into one glorious strike." The human crew watched in horror as hundreds of Starforge ships locked together, forming a giant ring-shaped weapon. Energy began to build between them, creating a blast that could potentially destroy a planet. "They're going to get themselves all killed," Reed whispered, "and make the anomaly even more dangerous." The Starforge weapon fired. A beam of pure destruction, brighter than any star, struck the anomaly dead center. For a brief moment, the void seemed to waver. "See," the Emperor shouted, "it's working." Then the anomaly pulsed again. The beam of energy bent like light through a prism, splitting into hundreds of smaller beams that shot back at the Starforge fleet. Their linked formation, meant to concentrate their attack, now meant none of them could escape. In less than a minute, the entire fleet was gone. Silence filled the communication channels. The remaining warrior races watched in stunned disbelief as their mightiest weapons proved useless. On the Observer, Miller's crew worked frantically to collect data and search for survivors. Their sensors showed what the warrior races refused to see. The anomaly was now twice its original size, its quantum field even more unstable. "Sir," Reed called out, her voice urgent, "the data from our remote probes is showing something interesting. These patterns in the quantum field, they're not random. There's something almost artificial about them." Miller looked at the readings. While the warrior races had been launching their attacks, the human ships had been carefully gathering data, sending in shielded probes, and analyzing every detail. "Keep studying it," he ordered. "There has to be a pattern we can understand. Something we're missing." As he spoke, an alert sounded through the ship. The anomaly's expansion rate had increased again. At its current pace, it would reach populated systems within days. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a signal. The Council, they're calling for another emergency meeting. And this time, they want us to speak first." The Council chamber was eerily quiet compared to their first meeting. Many seats stood empty, representing fleets and warriors lost to the anomaly. Captain Miller stood at the center, his simple blue uniform a stark contrast to the battle-damaged armor of the surviving warrior representatives. "Our analysis shows the anomaly is artificial," Miller said, gesturing to the holographic display. "The quantum field patterns mesh certain mathematical sequences that couldn't occur naturally." First Speaker Max, his crystalline form now dulled with stress, leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, human?" "We believe it's a machine, or at least part of one," Dr. Reed explained from her position beside Miller. "Our probes detected repeating patterns similar to damaged power systems." "A machine can be destroyed," growled Metal Chief Blade, one of the few Proxima lords who had survived. "We should gather our remaining fleets and—" "With all due respect," Miller cut in, his voice firm, "that's exactly what we shouldn't do. Look at this data." The hologram shifted, showing how each attack had made the anomaly stronger. The warrior races shifted uncomfortably in their seats as they watched their mighty fleets disappear again and again in the replay. "We have a different approach," Miller continued. "We've developed specialized shields that can withstand the quantum fluctuations for short periods. We've built probes with multiple backup systems and self-repair capabilities. We've created emergency protocols for every possible scenario." "How long will all these preparations take?" asked First Speaker Max. 3 days to deploy our full research fleet. Another 2 for initial tests. We do nothing without triple-checking every system." Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the chamber. "A week of delay while the anomaly grows." Someone shouted, "Cowardice." Miller held up his hand, and to everyone's surprise, displayed some fire of his own. "Call it what you want, but our cowardice has gathered more data about this threat than all your brave attacks combined. Our cowardice has saved hundreds of your warriors with our rescue ships and medical facilities, and our cowardice is the only approach that hasn't made the situation worse." Silence fell over the chamber. The warrior races looked at each other, their usual bravado diminished by the truth of his words. "Show us your plan," First Speaker Max said quietly. Dr. Reed stepped forward, bringing up detailed schematics. "We've designed a series of probe ships, each protected by layered quantum shields. They'll work in teams of 3, 1 to gather data, 1 to provide power and shield support, and 1 to maintain an emergency escape corridor." "All this redundancy," Metal Chief Blade muttered, but there was less mockery in his voice now. "Each ship has 4 backup systems for every critical component," Reed continued. "If something fails, there are 3 more ready to take over. If those fail, the ship automatically retreats. We take no unnecessary risks." The presentation continued, showing every safety measure, every precaution, every carefully planned detail. Some warrior races looked bored, others impatient, but none could deny the thoroughness of the human approach. "The first probe teams will launch tomorrow," Miller concluded. "We'll establish a safe perimeter and gather detailed data about the anomaly structure. Only when we fully understand what we're dealing with will we attempt any direct intervention." First Speaker Max stood, his crystalline form catching the light. "The Council has little choice but to approve this plan. But know this, humans, if your careful approach fails, if your abundance of caution costs us more time while the anomaly grows, you will be held responsible." Miller nodded, accepting the weight of that responsibility. "We understand. But sometimes the bravest choice is to be careful when everyone else is being reckless." As the council session ended, Miller watched the warrior races leave, their proud shoulders slightly bent, their fierce weapons a little less proudly displayed. Perhaps they were finally learning that true courage came in many forms. "Ready the fleet," he told Dr. Reed. "Let's show them how humans solve problems." The human probe fleet moved with careful precision through space. 3 days into their mission, they had established a network of sensor stations around the anomaly's perimeter. Each station was backed up by redundant systems, protected by overlapping shields, and ready to retreat at the first sign of danger. Captain Miller watched from the observer's bridge as the latest data streamed in. "Report, Dr. Reed." "The anomaly structure is definitely artificial," she said, studying her screens. We're detecting what looks like damaged power conduits, similar to ancient energy distribution networks, but on a massive scale. Suddenly, alarms blared across every ship in the fleet. The anomaly's outer edge pulsed with brilliant purple light, expanding faster than ever before. Multiple populated systems now in immediate danger. Lieutenant Dave reported, his fingers flying over his console. The Proxima colony world of Steel Haven will be hit first. Population 2 million. Miller grabbed his communications controls. This is Captain Miller to all ships. Begin emergency evacuation procedures. Implement protocol shield wall immediately. The human fleet moved like a well-oiled machine. Ships that had been collecting data quickly transformed into rescue vessels. Others positioned themselves to create a barrier of overlapping quantum shields between the anomaly and the threatened worlds. Warrior race fleets are arriving, Dave reported. They're asking for instructions, sir. Miller allowed himself a small smile. How things had changed. Direct them to evacuation points Beta through Delta. Have them follow our safety protocols exactly. The evacuation of Steel Haven began. Human ships, their hulls bristling with safety equipment that the warrior races had once mocked, led the way. Their shield networks created safe corridors through space, protecting civilian ships from the anomaly's quantum effects. First wave of evacuees safely away, Reed reported. Shield wall holding at 60% strength. Backup systems engaging automatically. The warrior race ships, following human guidance, proved to be excellent evacuation vessels once they stopped trying to fight everything. Their powerful engines, now used for rescue instead of attack, helped speed up the evacuation. Captain, Reed called out suddenly, I'm detecting something new in the anomaly's core. The expansion. It's affecting its internal structure. I can see more of the machinery now. Miller moved to her station, studying the readings. It looks like a control system. Yes, these patterns, they're like nothing I've seen before, but they're definitely some kind of control mechanism. And it's damage. Before Miller could respond, the anomaly pulsed again. The shield wall buckled under the strain. Shield wall at 40%, Daig shouted. Primary systems failing on sections 3 through 7. Engage backup shields. Miller ordered calmly. Switch to emergency power on all sections. Begin calculated withdrawal of sectors 8 through 12. The human fleet responded instantly to his commands. Where once there would have been panic, there was only smooth efficiency. Every system had a backup. Every failure had a response planned. Steel Haven evacuation, 60% complete, Reed reported. But the anomaly's expansion is accelerating. We're not going to get everyone out in time. Miller studied the tactical display, his mind racing through options. The warrior race's ships were performing well under human direction, but they weren't equipped with the same safety systems. Any closer to the anomaly, and they'd start losing ships again. Then he noticed something in Reed's data about the control system. A pattern. A possibility. Dr. Reed, he said slowly, if that's really a control system we're seeing, could we interface with it? She looked at him, eyes widening. You mean, try to shut it down from the inside? Sir, even with all our safety protocols, going that deep into the anomaly would be incredibly dangerous. More dangerous than letting it consume populated worlds. Reed turned back to her station, fingers flying over the controls. I'll need about an hour to modify our deepest penetrating probe. We'll have to install every backup system we have, and even then. Do it, Miller ordered. Then he opened a channel to the fleet. This is Captain Miller. I need volunteers for a special mission. One that will require all the caution, all the care, and all the proper preparation we can muster. Because sometimes, being careful isn't about avoiding danger. It's about facing it the right way. The modified probe ship Cautious Hope hovered at the edge of the anomaly's quantum field. Its hull gleamed with extra shielding, backup systems, and emergency devices. Captain Miller sat in the command chair, performing his third check of all systems. Shield status, he asked, his voice calm despite the tension. "Primary shields at full power," Dr. Reed replied from her station. "Backup shields 1 through 4 standing by. Emergency shield generators primed." The rest of the small crew, just 5 people total, continued their own system checks. Each one had volunteered for this mission, understanding its importance and its dangers. Through the view screen, they could see the observer and the remaining fleet maintaining the shield wall around the evacuated space. Final communication from First Speaker Max. Lieutenant Dave reported, "The warrior race's ships are in position to assist when we succeed." Miller noted the change in wording. Even the warrior races were learning to be positive but practical. "Begin approach sequence," Miller ordered. "Remember your training. No heroics. No rushed decisions. We do this carefully or not at all." The cautious Hope moved forward, its multiple shield layers lighting up as they encountered the quantum field. Inside the ship, every motion was deliberate, every action double-checked. They had practiced this approach 100 times in simulations. "Outer layer penetrated," Reed announced. "All shields holding. Power consumption within expected parameters." The darkness of the anomaly surrounded them. The ship's powerful lights barely penetrated the quantum storms raging around them. But their sensors, designed specifically for this environment, painted a clear picture of what lay ahead. "Structure becoming visible," Reed said excitedly. It's massive. Some kind of ancient space station, I think. The quantum field is coming from its damaged power core." Through the swirling chaos, they could now see enormous metal structures. What had appeared as a void from the outside was actually a vast complex of machinery, torn apart by its own malfunctioning systems. "Primary shields down to 60%, Dave reported. "Switching to first backup. Now." The transition was smooth, practiced. Where warrior race ships would have tried to push through on failing shields, the human vessel simply switched to fresh ones. "We're approaching what appears to be a control center," Reed said. "The quantum storms are stronger here. Multiple system failures detected in outer hull sensors." "Switching to backup sensor array," Miller responded calmly. "Deploy emergency stabilizers." The ship shuddered as it pushed deeper into the anomaly. Warning lights flashed across every console, but for each problem, there was a solution ready. For each failure, a backup system engaged. "Sir," Reed's voice held controlled excitement. "I'm detecting what looks like a main control interface. If we can dock with it." "Take us in," Miller ordered. "Carefully." The cautious Hope moved forward with precision, its docking systems extending through multiple layers of shields. The ancient station's interface loomed before them, crackling with quantum energy. "Second shield layer failing," Dave reported. "Switching to third backup. Interface connection in 30 seconds." Miller watched as his crew worked with focused efficiency. No panic, no rushed actions, no desperate heroics. Just careful, practiced movements and constant system monitoring. "Connection established," Reed announced. "Beginning interface sequence. Quantum field is trying to disrupt our systems, but the shields are holding. Uploading our shutdown program now." The ship vibrated as energy coursed through its connection to the ancient station. Warning alerts sounded from multiple stations, but each time, a backup system engaged smoothly. "Program upload at 50%, Reed reported. "Station systems are responding. The quantum field, it's starting to stabilize. All ships, stand by," Miller broadcast to the waiting fleet. "Prepare for quantum field collapse. Maintain safety protocols." As the upload continued, Miller allowed himself a small smile. They had reached this point not through bold charges or glorious attacks, but through careful planning, multiple backups, and the courage to take things slowly when everything seemed to demand haste. "Upload at 90%, Reed announced. Almost there. The ancient station's quantum field collapsed with a flash of purple light that rippled across space. On the bridge of the cautious Hope, Captain Miller and his crew watched as the massive void that had threatened the galaxy transformed into a visible structure. a magnificent but damaged space station larger than a small moon. "Shutdown sequence complete," Dr. Reed announced, her voice tired but proud. "The quantum field has been fully contained. Station's basic systems are responding to our commands." "All ships reporting in," Lieutenant Dave added. The shield wall held. No casualties. Every backup system performed exactly as designed. Miller opened a channel to the gathered fleet. "This is Captain Miller. The immediate danger has passed. The anomaly was actually an ancient power station with a damaged core. Our safety protocols and careful approach allowed us to shut it down properly." The response was not what anyone would have expected a week ago. Instead of dismissing the human achievement, the warrior races began transmitting messages of congratulation and, surprisingly, respect. "The Council requests your presence, Captain." First Speaker Max's voice came through clearly, "and they ask that you bring your safety protocols and system backup designs." 3 days later, Miller stood in the council chamber again. But this time, instead of being relegated to a corner, he occupied the central position. The warrior races, their pride tempered by recent events, listened intently as he explained the human approach to dangerous situations. "The station was built by an ancient civilization," Miller explained, showing holographic images. "Its power core was damaged, creating the quantum field we saw as a void. Previous attempts to destroy it only fed it more energy, making it grow. And your cautious approach allowed you to discover this." Metal Chief Blade asked, his tone genuinely curious rather than mocking. "Yes," Dr. Reed answered, stepping forward. "By carefully studying the problem instead of rushing to attack it, we learned its true nature. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take a step back and think." The council chamber, once filled with the sound of boasting and battle cries, now buzzed with discussions of safety measures and backup systems. Warrior races that had previously scorned human caution were now asking detailed questions about emergency protocols and redundant safety features. "The council has made a decision," First Speaker Max announced, his crystalline form glowing brightly. "All ships in galactic space will be required to install basic safety systems based on human designs. Additionally, we are creating a new division within the Council, the Department of Strategic Caution, to be headed by humans." Miller looked around the chamber, seeing nodding heads where before there had been only scoffs. The warrior races were learning that courage came in many forms. Being careful didn't mean being cowardly. It meant being smart enough to stay alive and succeed. "One more thing," First Speaker Max added. "The ancient station. Preliminary studies suggest it contains technological advances far beyond our current understanding. The Council has decided that the human approach, careful study, multiple safety protocols, and methodical research will be used to explore it." As the council session ended, Miller walked with Dr. Reed back to their ship. "Quite a change from our first meeting here," he said, smiling slightly. Reed nodded. "They called us cowards because we refused to rush into danger. Now they're installing our safety systems on their warships." "Sometimes it takes more courage to be careful than to be reckless," Miller replied. "The galaxy is finally learning what humanity has known for a long time. That true bravery isn't about ignoring danger. It's about respecting it enough to face it properly," Reed finished. Above them, through the crystal dome of the council chamber, they could see ships from various warrior races practicing new formation patterns, slower, more careful patterns, with backup systems engaged and safety protocols in place. The galaxy was changing, one careful step at a time. And somewhere in the depths of space, the ancient station waited to share its secrets, not with those who would rush in bravely, but with those who would approach it with the right mix of courage and caution. The human way.